The quote on that I've used as a title is by Thomas Edison, and it sums up the attitude of most people in technology, and probably most people in science, to be fair. It's there's always something you can do better. And what I'm going to do is hopefully lead you through how that striving for doing things better can actually lead to economic growth. Now, if you've read my CV, you know I've worked for 3 blue-chip companies in my career, only one of which still exists. But each one of them has sent me on a presentation skills course. So in keeping with what I've been taught all those times, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you first. What I'm going to start with is a list of challenges that face our society, possibly even our species. Now, they will affect all of you, so as a health warning, I don't want you to get scared. Then I'm going to just quickly show a couple of schematics of one of the many ways that you can link those challenges to the sorts of activities you need to deliver knowledge expansion and economic growth. Things like technology roadmaps, project plans, those sorts of things. Then I'm going to tell you about the Technology Strategy Board, who we are and what we do, because that's probably written into my contract that I have to do that in every speech. I'll get there in the end. Right. Okay. The world we live in is an incredibly challenging place. And challenges are one of the things that define the human species. This is getting frustrating. One of the first challenges we have is just the sheer volume of people on our planet. This is a graph of the population of our planet over the last several hundred years. In the last century, the world population increased by a factor of 4 to over 6.5 billion. In the same time, the population of the UK increased about 60% to 61 million. So the growth is elsewhere, but nevertheless, that's a substantial growth. It's not the problem of the fact that there are the people, it's the what people do. There are some pictures on this slide which show some of the things that we have achieved in the last century, all of which have had an impact on the planet. And the numbers that are coming up are the growth rates in that last century. So, at the beginning of the last century, there were no airplanes. A couple of years ago, we flew 1.5 trillion passenger miles. It will be less this year, of course. Trains, another form of transport, have gone from about 850 to 1,250 million passenger miles. So that's actually scaled fairly well with the population of the UK. Housing, we've gone up from about 7.5 million houses to 26 million houses. So there's roughly half as many people in every domestic building in this country these days. Our overall manufacturing output went up by a factor of 40. That's a huge increase. We now all own and want to own more stuff. Cars, we've gone from about 15,000 to about 33 million over that century. And mobile phones from about 3,000 up to about 33 million. Our increase in the use of water has gone up. We now use on average 150 litres per person per day, and our use of energy has gone up by a factor of 16. So it's not just the fact that we exist, it's what we choose to do. And all of those have an impact on our world. We consume resources, be it things like oil or some of the minerals and metals that make up the fabric of our planet, but also we use energy to convert them. So we've done an awful lot in the last century. We have another challenge facing us as a society. We're all actually lasting a lot longer. This is a map of the population in 2010. It's downloadable off a Department of Health website. It's known in the trade as a kebab diagram for fairly obvious reasons. How many of you are around about 45? Hands up. You're that bulge over there. Okay? There's about just under 1 million of you, slightly more women than men, but you're one of the many baby booms we've seen. If you take that forward, you'll notice that population is now going to be 85. This is 2050, a year that, for all sorts of reasons, is important for us. About 60% of you are going to be still alive. That's pretty bad news for the other 40%, but good for you. If you go back, you'll notice that the 85-year-olds now, there's a fairly small amount, and if you go forward, there's about 3 times as many men, about 2.5 times as many women as there are going to be this year. But actually, again, if you compare, please. I give up. If you compare, back. If you compare the range in sort of 20 to 30, where conventionally nurses and doctors come from, and then go forward, it's about the same number. So there's going to be at least 3 or more times more old people and the same number of people to look after them. So the current care model we've got just is going to be broken. And personally, since I intend to be an 85-year-old one day, I want that fixed. And I would suggest all of you do as well. I've already hinted at it, but the how we live and work challenge is quite a big one as well. We all consume enormous amounts of energy in our daily lives. The illuminated skyline of cities, the energy we use in houses. This is a plot of energy consumption over the last 30-odd years. That's moving up from about 430 to 530 gigawatt hours over that time. That's adding about 4 gigawatt hours a year. That's 2 very large power stations a year. And actually, the population hasn't gone up in that much time. That's us consuming more energy in our houses. There's also a love to travel challenge. Somewhere above self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the desire to go on holiday to Benidorm, although you've been caught out at the moment. I've talked about flying, but this is passenger miles travelled in personal vehicles. You'll notice the last time we had a recession, there was a small dip but a very strong bounce back. We didn't buy that many cars last year, but we actually kept on driving the ones we did have. There's an almost inexorable rise in the amount we travel as a society. All these things put pressure on energy resources, roads, congestion, parking spaces and everything. Not content with having a good go at challenging ourselves in the physical world, we've invented a whole new world to go into and challenge ourselves. Because if you thought the physical world was challenging, we've taken an opportunity of the digital world and turned it into an even more challenging place. It has a staggering growth rate. This is the amount of fixed line traffic over the last few years, 42% compound annual growth rate. And you can see the sorts of things that have been up there. Increasingly, we're keeping our data remote from ourselves and then streaming it to us. That's fixed line. If you look at what happened when we turned on a mobile broadband a few years ago, there was a 75-fold increase in the first year of operation.